Campbell. I'm the director of the Secret City Improv Festival, and it is my pleasure to tell you all that you can go to. I always do this wrong because I automatically, I'm pointing in the direction that it is on the screen, and it's always backwards because it's the stage direction. But you can go to secretcityimprofest.com and find out about our festival. You can buy your tickets at secretcityimprofest.com/tickets. You can just donate by doing the same, just /donate. You can sponsor us by just secretcityimprofest.com/sponsorship. Go find us on all of your favorite socials. We're probably there, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, you name it, we're there. The festival, September 30th, October 1st. We're going to have 7 awesome shows, 18 professional troupes, and 5 high schools that are going to be with us at the historic Grove Theater in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And it is my pleasure to bring with us somebody that's going to be with us all through the festival. So you'll see him in the majority of our shows. I would like to bring our only solo performer for the festival. This is Hadley.
Hi there.
So Hadley, you are based out of Chicago. Am I not right?
That's right. So I moved to Chicago in 2019 in pursuit of comedy and acting. I've been doing it since the 4th grade. I think I was the Cheshire Cat in the 4th grade production of Alice in Wonderland. And ever since then, I needed to find a way to put myself on stage. So I studied acting at Northern Arizona University's acting program. And I came here on a scholarship for the IO Theater to study comedy and improv, as well as at the Annoyance Theater as well to study even more comedy and improv.
And then you liked it so much you stayed.
I stayed. Yeah, I currently doing my best to pursue my push my career to new places, and I'm having a blast out here.
If you want to check out, it's Hadley working on the socials. Go check out the Instagram page that he has, because you can see a lot of his really funny stuff, because what Hadley does is incredibly funny. So you're doing solo. Everybody else is either in a duo, or they're in a trio, or they're in an ensemble. Like, they have people to play off of. How did you settle into doing something that is to do it specialized as a solo and do it really well? That takes some skill. How did you come about becoming a solo?
Well, to tell you the truth, I started doing it out of necessity, because I didn't have an improv group that I was a part of, but I didn't want to lose the skills that I had, so I just started doing solo improv because I had seen other people do it before, and I wanted to give it a try, and I found out I really liked it. And the thing is, though, and here's the thing I'll tell you, is that there's no way in a million years I would have ever been able to do solo improv without first having the kind of understanding that I have for normal improv, because typical improv is made for a group of people. It's made so that you can listen and respond to the people around you. And all I'm doing is taking those skills that I've learned from the past years that I've been improvising with people and without people. And I'm essentially turning that stuff within myself, and I'm listening to myself, basically. And I'm trying to and in those scenes, I try to figure out what it is I need, what it is I want. And a lot of the funny stuff just comes out of the truth. I hate to be somebody that quotes improv literature, but there is some truth in comedy. So
Absolutely. I've done solo improv, and it is way harder. Like, so when you get a suggestion, or you get a prompt to enter into a scene, like, because you do a lot of world building around you. So how do you come up with the the people that we don't see, but you bring them in such a way that you feel like you see them.
In solo improv, the thing I usually tell people, and especially in the workshops that I teach, is that since you are by yourself, usually in an improv scene, you'd be able to say something and your partner would be able to say something back. And the issue is that no matter how hard you try to talk to the person that you might have imagined in an improv scene, they're never going to say anything to you. And so some of the tricks that I like to use are putting, if there is a person, I've been testing out more situations lately where I'm not talking to a person, I'm talking to an object or just to myself. But I put whatever person it is that I'm speaking to in a situation where they have no opportunity to be able to talk back, because there's quite literally never going to be a response to any of the questions that I have for this imaginary person. So I have to be able to put them in a situation where I know that they're not going to, my character knows that they're not going to be able to respond to anything. And usually that is just a really good way to be able to, it makes the reflection part of it a lot easier. And it makes it so that it's a lot easier for me to find out what it is that my character is missing out of their lives. And the world building comes out of that. All the world building and everything that comes out, that's around me, comes out of how I'm feeling and what my character needs. So
A lot of people, especially if you do other forms of theater, you know, you get to, if you play a villain, there's a lot of catharsis in playing a villain. A lot of improvisers talk about when they get on stage, they feel like they sometimes they go through a therapy session. When you're doing solo, when you're doing solo improv, do you ever have that moment where you feel like you're working something, like you're having like a breakthrough moment?
no, not necessarily, but everyone has their own personal opinions on it. But I personally could never use improv as a means for therapy. Essentially, I couldn't, just because then the character, then in my mind it becomes, then the scene isn't about exploring a character, then it sort of becomes exploring me as a person. And that's, and that can kind of be dangerous in a way, in my personal opinion, just because then if you start, if the scene becomes about you and not a character, then you're putting yourself into these. It's like when when people with anxiety have like little conversations in their head with people that they're thinking about, like, oh, what would happen if I approached this person and said this thing to them, and you kind of go back and forth in your head about, maybe this is just me. You kind of go back and forth in your head about how that conversation would go if you did confront this person. And so if there, a lot of my stuff, yes, does come from my truth as and my reality as a person, but usually it'll be, if it comes from any quote unquote traumatic moment in my life, it's usually something that's been completely resolved or is pretty close to being resolved, as opposed to something that's actively happening to me, because I could look at that through a lens of that I'm far away from that moment.
When you're on stage, like if anybody ever gets the opportunity to take like Missy Wittes's workshop. Missy Wittes runs the Middle Child Improv in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
And one of her workshops is knowing where you are. She calls it like the boy band method. So you're the starter, you're the one that closes, you're the one who is like the solo, you're the one that's the superstar, so on and so forth. Knowing you are every position inside of that.
Mm-hmm.
When you get that third thought, because Del Close always says you take your third thought. When you get your never quote improv literature, that's two. We can put a counter up somewhere on the screen. That's twice. How do you get to that third thought? Because there's always the obvious thought, you never go with it because that's low hanging fruit, and the second thought is usually low hanging fruit in some form. How do you get to that? How do you get to to your third thought when you start a scene?
This is the issue I have with that, and it's not actually an issue. It's just a different way that I look at it. But the third, I understand the third thought and like what the whole point of it is. But the issue when you're doing solo improv is that when it's just you up there, sometimes you don't have time for the third thought, and so most of the time, the first thought and this goes back to my time at the IO, where it goes, there are no bad ideas. No matter what idea comes out, that idea has to become the best idea in the whole world, because it's the only thing that you have. I mean, improv is taking what you have and using that, and that's the definition of improvise, or to improvise, is to take what's on hand and use that to your benefit. And so being looking at the first thought and then filing through more thoughts to figure out which one's going to be better for you is potentially, for me, I have found, is another potentially dangerous moment where you file through the first two thoughts, and then you kind of find out that the first one would have been fine. But the reality is that you're not going to know until you're in the situation. And so I don't see anything wrong with the first thought, as long as you double down and you commit onto whatever it is, because it's like second grade kindergarten stuff, but like you kind of gotta believe that there are no stupid questions, that there are no stupid ideas.
Whenever I'm in a scene, or if I step out and I have an idea, I always refer to it as, how did man learn to fly? They threw themselves at the ground and missed. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
that's kind of the way to do it. But there's always, you meet the people that they become real methodical in how they come up with when they build a character, they build a world or anything like that.
Well, and it should feel like free falling. It should be like jumping off of a cliff. I mean, here goes more literature. TJ and Dave say that improv should feel like free falling, where the ground is starting to appear underneath you piece by piece. But when you're falling, you don't have time to come up with the answer. You got to find the answer that's going to prevent you from becoming a splatter on the ground. And I it's a great teacher of mine once said that nobody died doing improv. It's pretty low stakes stuff. We're not doing Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark here, but it's nobody ever died doing it. But at the same time, you got to realize that, like, sometimes you only got 10 minutes to give people what you have, and if you only have 10 minutes to do it, then you just got to take what you have and you got to run with it.
So you're going to be joining us for the intensive. Now, you teach solo improv workshops.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working with high schoolers that are new at relatively new at this, what's the strength of being able to teach as a solo? That, I think, that plays interestingly well with the group.
Step one, I mean, in the past, when I've done, it's been a while since I've taught high schoolers improv specifically. But one of the things that I usually start with, especially with people that have never done improv before, I tell them that if you try to be funny, you're going to fall flat on your face. That attempting, if you're there to make jokes and to just generally be funny, you're gonna have a hard time doing the kind of stuff that we do. And there's nothing wrong with making jokes, there really isn't. But with long form improv and the kind of improv that I do, if you go into it with the mindset of these people are gonna laugh, you're gonna have a really hard time. And what comes out, where the funny stuff comes out of, is when you're being completely honest with yourself and being completely honest with the person that you're playing on stage. And that's when things start to become funny. And even then, sometimes they're not. I've seen some of the most beautiful improv scenes in the world that nobody was laughing. I've seen improv scenes where people have cried before, which is such a cliche to say, but like, I'd rather see personally something where people are honest about what's going on, as opposed to getting up there and doing who's on first, you know? And if you're doing who's on first, just be honest about the fact that you're doing who's on first. As long as you're honest, that's all that matters.
Absolutely. Finding the truth in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see what you impart with our high schoolers in the Sladen intensives too.
Well, I'm very excited to work with them.
All right, so you're in Chicago. How can, real quick before the bouncer comes in and throws us out of here, so how can they find you if they're in the Chicagoland area? How can they find you?
Well, I usually post about what shows I'm doing, what shows I'm producing on my Instagram. I've got a show coming up at a unknown location. It's called my handle is at Hadley Working, and the show itself is called Silly Shit, and it's got that's one that I'm producing, and it's got a big old list of people that are some of the funniest people I've ever met in my life, and that's on September 12th at, oh goodness, at 7:30 p.m. It's a DM for address kind of thing, so if anyone wants to know what's going on with that, they can DM me. But I'm usually playing all around the city in different bars and different theaters, at the Annoyance and the Bug House Theater specifically. But I usually put all my information on my Instagram. So if anyone's genuinely interested, then they can follow me on Instagram.
Right on. And we cannot wait to see Hadley, and you'll see him on both nights of the festival. He will be a part of pretty much every show, so we can't wait to have Hadley with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. So get your tickets for the Improv Festival at secretcityimprovfest.com/tickets. Throw us a couple of bucks in donation at secretcityimprovfest.com/donate. Follow us on the socials, and we'll see you guys September 30th and October 1st at the Historic Grove Theater. Hadley, thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to see you. We'll see you in September.
Thank you so much, Aaron. It was a pleasure talking with you.